on the program tonight. As I mentioned, the Washington Post has already issued one correction regarding you being previously registered as a Democrat. What else did they get wrong?
Well, they did start out with saying that I basically made up the fact that my father never went to jail. And as you saw with the records that we sent to Fox News, that's completely false. You know, my story growing up within the welfare system, going to over 6 high schools, that's not something that the Washington Post wants to tell the truth about. They also proceeded to leave out an entire interview with a roommate that I had that debunked a bizarre claim made by someone that was apparently stationed with me that claimed that I owned a firearm during this break-in. So the fact is that we have these receipts. My attorneys already issued a letter of correction. Washington Post didn't respond to a response from Fox Digital, nor did any of the other people that made these bizarre allegations. And we will be issuing these letters to correct to Vanity Fair, and a few other major outlets decided to run with this story before they corrected the facts. I will say that People magazine did reach out, and they wanted to wait to see this episode before they ran the story, so I'll be interviewing with them after. But it's awful how they treat minorities, and the fact is that their undertone of their article was incredibly racist. They tried to undercut my Hispanic heritage. They even spoke to my mother and did report a lot of what she was posting. So the Washington Post is compost, and they should do better.
Why do you think, Congresswoman, that you were their target?
I think that my story is something that they didn't want to believe is true. Again, I grew up within the welfare system. I went to over 6 high schools. My parents were never married. And I also think one of the craziest claims that they're trying to say is that I wasn't raised as a Messianic Jew. You know, I have documentation and photos of my father at synagogue. My mother confirmed this to the Washington Post. But again, they don't want people like me to have credibility. And so what they try to do is attack the reputation. Mind you, this is also a few days after, though, I went after Yoel Roth and Twitter for exposing them as being joint state actors. And so I am on congressional oversight. I do believe that they're trying to, again, attack my credibility, and I'm not going to let them get away with this. The American people deserve honest representation. I'm exactly that, and I have the receipts to prove it.
Yeah, many people saw that interaction with Yoel Roth this week from Twitter. You brought up race. I would love to ask you this one last question. You know, your situation with the Washington Post here reminds me of a story, again, with the Washington Post from a few years ago when it came to South Carolina Senator Tim Scott. It seemed to question Scott's story, and by implication, whether or not he was authentically black or had an authentically black experience in America. They point out that you changed your last name, that you previously went by your father's last name and later in life changed your last name to Luna. And again, the implication seems to me to be you're not authentically Hispanic.
That is completely true. And again, the racist undertone of this article is pretty mind-blowing. My mom actually had responded, told them about how I was raised, the fact that my father was fluent in Spanish. And, you know, we even provided them with immigration records of my grandparents, and they didn't want to report on any of that. And so when you see how they treat minority conservatives, you understand that this isn't about reporting the truth. It's about really attacking conservatives that can reach a base that they hope to control. It is about power. And the fact is that especially with Hispanic Americans of Mexican descent, we are largely moving to the Republican Party, and for good reason. The Democrats are destroying this country, and I'm not going to let them silence my voice. If anything, I will talk to any investigative journalist that wants to correct these facts. But remember, the Washington Post reached out to my own mother and asked for a death certificate to prove my grandmother died of AIDS due to heroin use. And they couldn't even confirm that in their own report.
Wow.